Hi, I'm Doom. Hi.
Sorry for leaving you at a total cliffhanger there. This is Thrown Abroad, Chapter 9.
Well, this is awkward,
the changeling said, as he took a few steps back. A few hundred pairs of eyes were still looking at him. Was it always this hot in the barn?
You don't suppose we could let bygones be bygones? Then we can all just take a nice deep breath and bye!
He whirled around and sprinted for the barn doors. Behind him, he could hear a pony shout something, then a loud whoosh. He felt something or some pony tackle him from behind. He was flung forward, rolling head over hooves. While he tumbled, he could see a rainbow blur somewhere, telling him that it was Rainbow Dash who had knocked him over. He rolled into the barn doors, jaws first. Luckily, due to his head's earlier experience with bumps, he could quickly recover.
Now, before they can react, I'll get out of...
he thought, as he stared up at the ceiling. As he tried to move, however, he could only feel that his teeth hurt.
Wait, what?
He stared at where his head was touching the barn doors. Apparently, he'd been flung forward so hard that his fangs were now stuck in the wood. He cursed himself. He tried pulling himself loose again, but his teeth wouldn't budge. That was until he saw a purple glow surround his head, and felt something pull at him. His teeth suddenly came loose from the door, the whiplash causing him to turn around. Suddenly he was staring into the angry faces of 6 ponies he had already met. Apparently Rarity had already recovered from fainting.
Wow, fancy that. Meeting the elements of harmony,
he said, as he chuckled nervously. He tried taking a step backwards, but found that he was already against the wall. He pushed himself further away from the 6 ponies in front of him, causing him to sit down.
"Where's Suncloak?"
Rainbow Dash demanded, inching closer to... Oh, I didn't see that one coming.
"Where's Suncloak?"
Rainbow Dash demanded, inching closer to the changeling.
What?
Suncloak answered. He was Suncloak. Well, it was only a temporary name. He didn't really have a changeling name since he was banished anyway. No hive meant no job, and no job meant no name, technically. But still, Suncloak was his name. He'd gotten at least a little bit attached to it.
"Where'd you leave the real Sunny?" Pinkie Pie demanded. "You mean meanie pants changeling? Give him back!" "But I am Suncloak,"
the changeling protested. Did they really think he'd abducted a pony named Suncloak to take his place? At least it meant that he'd done a good job with his disguise and behavior. Obviously not, Rarity said. Since you're a changeling, you must have replaced poor Suncloak some time ago. Okay, these ponies were just being stupid now.
"Like I said, I am Suncloak. I've been Suncloak ever since I met the Cutie Mark Crusaders,"
he yelled angrily. The 6 ponies suddenly gave him surprised and confused looks. They really did think he was a pony. Everything would have turned out great.
"I knew it!"
Applejack exclaimed. It was Suncloak's turn to look surprised.
"What do you mean?"
he asked the orange pony.
I should have known when I thought your hoof felt weird when I shook it," she said.
So she'd suspected something from the very start.
"I told you that I thought he was lying, Twilight."
Well, at least they don't call her the element of honesty for nothing. But I don't understand, Twilight said. I just thought you were a bit on edge because of the invasion wasn't that long ago. He didn't really seem like a changeling when you sent him over with that book like we planned. Whoa, that had actually been planned in advance? Applejack must have gone to the library during his first night in the barn. Ponies were apparently a lot more clever than he thought. Well, of all the things that could have possibly happened, Rarity said, this was the worst thing possible. The other 5 ponies finished for her, with deadpan looks. Even Fluttershy, surprisingly. Or technically it's the worst possible thing, but shut up. Well, I was going to say, quite unexpected, actually, Rarity said. I deliberately bumped into him to check after Twilight told me you suspected something, she told Applejack. But I didn't think he was a changeling either. His cloak is somewhat tacky, but that hardly means some pony is a changeling. I thought changelings were meaner than him. How incredibly rude. Changelings weren't mean. They just didn't think the same way as ponies. Then again, he'd always thought ponies were really dumb, but apparently they constructed schemes behind his back to find out if he was a changeling or not.
"Hey," Rainbow Dash chimed in, "at least you didn't make a joke about him being a changeling."
Right. She had done that. She must have realized she was right by now. "He was weird and stuff, but that didn't tell me he was a changeling. We know other weird ponies after all." She looked at Pinkie Pie. "I'm just surprised your Pinkie Sense didn't tell you anything." "Hey, my Pinkie Sense only predicts stuff in the near future," Pinkie Pie said seriously. "It didn't tell me he was a changeling. Besides, I kept an eye on him like Twilight asked me to, and when I met him, he was nice, and he waited for my welcome wagon, and he even had to laugh when I accidentally swapped the confetti for my sprinkles." She sat down and looked at Fluttershy. "And Fluttershy was there too. You didn't think he was a changeling, right, Fluttershy?" The other elements looked expectantly at Fluttershy, who had started blushing a bit. She started. "Well?" Twilight Sparkle asked. "You didn't suspect him, right?" "Well," Fluttershy started, "I didn't really notice anything big when I met him." Rainbow Dash rushed over to her and wildly shook the Pegasus around. "Well, come on! Tell us! Some pony had to have noticed." She put Fluttershy down again. Sorry. Got swept up in the moment." The timid mare shook her head to get rid of the dizziness. "If you really want to know..." She took a deep breath. "His cloak followed the contours of his hoof so I could see the holes. There were bulges where his wings were. I could see his short gray tail, and I could see his eyes just slightly through the sunglasses. Oh, and I saw him around my house the day before Applejack met him." The other 5 ponies gave her confused looks. "But, darling, why didn't you tell us?" Rarity asked. "Oh," Fluttershy said timidly, "I thought it'd be really rude. No pony likes a tattletale." Rainbow Dash slapped herself in the face with a hoof and groaned. "Regardless, we have him now," Twilight said, as she turned towards the caught changeling again. "Now," the barn door was slightly open, and there wasn't a changeling to be found. Twilight sighed. "Let's split up and look for him. He couldn't have gotten that far." Pinkie Pie turned to all the other ponies in the barn. "Sorry, every pony! The party is on hold for now." She was met by a chorus of "Aww." Suncloak found himself fleeing through the orchard of Sweet Apple Acres. Everything had gone so well until now. The ponies had suspected he was a changeling, but he fooled them all. They saw through his disguise, but apparently they thought he was too nice to be a changeling. Not that they were incredibly wrong. Changelings could be jerks, in fact. They were jerks most of the time towards each other. Why be friends with other changelings if they wouldn't share love with you anyway? They needed it to stay alive as well. The deepest relationship changelings could have was rivalry. Interesting. So your arch nemesis is your soulmate.
No, that's not.
No, seriously, because like soulmate doesn't necessarily have to mean like, I don't know, frou. That's the only definition I can think. That's what it would be. It would be their soulmate. Their soulmate is their arch enemy. He wasn't even halfway across the orchard before he felt really tired. That didn't come as a surprise, seeing as he hadn't taken any love for how many days? He hadn't kept count. But apparently after panicking about being found out and running, he was starting to run low on energy. Panting, he stopped next to one of the many apple trees. As he lay down on the ground, leaning against the tree, he sighed. He'd been banished from his hive and flung through the air for who knows how many miles. He landed near Ponyville and tried to steal love, where he got a disguise. Near Ponyville. He had landed near Ponyville, where he got a disguise and tried to steal love. He'd actually enjoyed being in Ponyville. Sure, the ponies had been annoying in various ways, but he could think of a bunch of worse ways to spend his time. The past days had been far more enjoyable than he thought, even though he had to be incredibly careful not to reveal himself to all the ponies in the town. However, that was all over now. Either he'd starve right here, or he'd be found, thrown in jail, and then he'd starve. He laid his head down and sighed. As he heard a pony approach him, he could hear the pony lay down in the grass as well, but the changeling didn't even bother looking. For several uneasy seconds, they remained silent. What are you waiting for? He asked the pony.
"Aren't you supposed to take me away? Put me in prison?"
The pony sighed. I don't get it. Judging from the voice, it was Twilight Sparkle. Great. It was even Princess Celestia's star pupil. Maybe he could get sent to the moon. That'd make everything go much faster.
"Don't get what?"
he asked shortly. I thought changelings were jerks. Why were you so nice to us? Twilight elaborated. Suncloak shrugged wearily. I had to stay hidden. I didn't have enough energy to put up a disguise, so I borrowed some things, and I hoped I could fool all of you.
But why are you here? Twilight asked. I don't think the Changeling Queen would send a hungry spy over here, and if I was a really hungry changeling, I'd go somewhere where I knew I could feed. Ponies were indeed far more clever than he had thought.
I was banished, he answered, tears welling up in his eyes. Queen Chrysalis blamed me for making the invasion fail. It wasn't my fault, but I think she was just really angry or wanted a scapegoat.
They both sighed, and remained silent for another few seconds. So, you don't have anything anymore? Twilight asked. There was a twinge of sadness in her voice. He shook his head.
No home, no friends, not even a name.
He swallowed. Did his throat always feel this tight?
Well, I suppose my name is Suncloak, but I just made that up to blend in.
He looked at Twilight.
But I actually like that name now. I enjoyed being in Ponyville. I really did, even though I found ponies to be annoying. Being around all of you somehow made me feel good in the end. And often, after talking to one of you ponies, I could feel just a little bit of love in the air around me. Not the real love stuff, but different.
He laid his head down again.
Not that it matters anymore.
He presented his front hooves to Twilight.
So go ahead. Lock me up.
I don't think I can resist. He held them there for a few moments, but there was no reaction. He shot the purple pony an annoyed look.
Well, come on, put the cuffs on. This is starting to hurt.
Twilight stared pensively. No, she said. The changeling laid his front legs on the ground again.
What? No. You told me yourself that you were supposed to capture and lock up every changeling you found. Stupid, ridiculous ponies. It's a royal order.
Twilight shook her head. You didn't take any love, right?
No, he answered. If I had stolen any more than the little bits I felt, I would have left Ponyville already.
Then why didn't you? Twilight asked. The changeling sighed.
Because I couldn't. Sure, I could have stolen some love, but that would mean I could have ruined a relationship. After my time spent here, I didn't think that'd be very nice.
So you wouldn't say you're a bad changeling, right? Twilight smiled.
Well, according to changeling standards, I'm a horrible changeling right now. But according to pony standards, I guess not, he answered. But does that matter? Orders? Changelings? Lock 'em up?
Actually, Twilight said, I made that up to check your reaction. The changeling's eyes widened.
Clever, scheming pony.
And actually, that wasn't much different from what he himself had done. Your reaction was far more extreme than a normal pony's reaction, Twilight said. She was right. He'd reacted incredibly, shocked. Any pony would probably be happy with such an order, or at the very least, slightly concerned.
Then why didn't you do anything?
Suncloak asked. I did, actually, Twilight answered. I informed Princess Celestia, and—
What?
The changeling exclaimed. He attempted to run away, but he didn't have the energy to stand up. He couldn't be blamed for trying, though. I told her that I pretty much knew you were a changeling, and she agreed. I thought you weren't a bad changeling, so I asked the princess if she could let me deal with the whole situation.
But, what? I don't, you, huh?
The changeling bumbled. So, she'd known since they met, but she didn't do anything? I thought you were a nice changeling. I talked to the ponies who had met you, and they also thought you were nice. You heard what the others said in the barn, Twilight said. And I think I know whose little bits of love you felt were. She put a hoof on his shoulder. Instantly, he felt and smelled love around him. There wasn't any doubt. It came from Twilight Sparkle. It wasn't the usual love that came from a couple, but a more subtle, somewhat diluted love. Unlike earlier times, this wasn't a little bite. This felt more like an average snack. Would it be all right if you just took it? You were nice to other ponies, and they were nice to you. I think the love you took was friendship. Friends love each other too, although not the way a couple do.
Suncloak slapped himself in the face. Of course! Most ponies didn't know he was a changeling, so they just treated him like any new pony. As a potential new friend, those little bits of love he felt were actually meant for him.
If I'm nice to ponies, they'll just give me love? Like you're giving me right now?
He asked hopefully. Twilight nodded. I bet that if you continue being nice, ponies will love you more and more. The changeling's horn glowed, and as he took in the love Twilight had given him, finally he had gotten something. He didn't even need to steal it. Weird, but strangely useful. If only he had known this earlier.
Thanks,
he said as he stood up. Twilight stood up as well.
How about we go back to the party? Don't I need a disguise?
Suncloak said. No, Twilight answered. Every pony already knows you're the real Suncloak anyway.
But why don't they hate me? Or won't they hate me?
The changeling asked, worried. He was a changeling. They were ponies. With the whole failed invasion thing being not that long ago, they'd probably want to run him out of the village. That's very true.
It'll be okay,
Twilight assured him.
Me, Applejack, Rainbow Dash, Rarity, Fluttershy, and Pinkie Pie will explain it to every pony. We're all your friends, and they trust us.
The changeling looked around.
Where are the others, anyway? Did you split up?
He turned around a few times. Twilight scratched her chin. We split up, but they should be about done looking around. I think they're back at the barn already. Let's go meet that. She was cut off by Pinkie Pie, jumping out of a bush and throwing herself around Suncloak. Yay! Sunny's gonna come to the party! She yelled as she hugged him. The changeling, on the other hoof, jumped up in the air with a loud yelp. After he landed, he struggled to get the party pony off him. Twilight sighed. Pinkie, were you eavesdropping on us alone in that bush?
I wasn't eavesdropping alone,
Pinkie said, still clinging to Suncloak. Applejack stepped out of the bush Pinkie had been hiding in, while Fluttershy and Rarity appeared from behind 2 trees. Rainbow Dash flew out of her hiding spot in a tree. Were all of you eavesdropping? Twilight asked them, annoyed. I bet Rainbow Dash was sleeping. We heard you talking, and we didn't want to interrupt, Fluttershy said, with her usual soft tone. So we just listened. Yeah! That was a terrible Pinkie Pie voice.
Yeah!
Pinkie Pie chimed in.
We thought Sunny sounded all sad, and we felt really sorry for ganging up on him earlier, and we didn't want to scare him.
Their mission had failed, quite obviously, in regards to the last part. Like Pinkie Pie said, we're awfully sorry, Rarity said. We didn't know you were the real Suncloak. You had us all fooled. Well, except Twilight, she added.
Hey, he didn't fool Fluttershy, Rainbow Dash said, and I had my suspicions all along.
Every pony gave her a deadpan look, except Pinkie Pie, who still excitedly was hugging Suncloak, who was still trying to get her off.
What? I totally did,
Rainbow Dash defended herself. After a few seconds, she said,
Okay, maybe I didn't.
Applejack took Pinkie Pie's tail in her mouth, pulling her off the changeling. I think you're starting to scare him, Pinkie, she said through clenched teeth. After she let go, she said, Why don't we get back to the barn? There's still a party in there. The 6 ponies looked expectantly at Suncloak. Well, he had the support of the elements of harmony now, so...
Sure,
the changeling said. When they arrived at the barn, Twilight told him to stay outside for a while, whilst they explained to the ponies inside what had happened. There still might be some racist rednecks or something, though, that are against him still. A few moments later, she poked her head out of the barn doors again. We explained it, and they understand. Come in, she said. Filled with far more uncertainty than he had prepared himself for, the changeling stepped into the barn. A few hundred ponies looked at him. It was completely silent.
Hi?
He said. They hated him. He had to turn back, find another village. The crowd suddenly erupted in cheers, while Pinkie Pie yelled, Let's party! And that's the end of the chapter. Goodbye, end of broadcast, end of recording. No!